sympathizers, but this argument conflicts with his refusal to admit that his movie is a fictional account after all. He persists in describing his movie as having mythical breadth and relevance and conveying a more profound spiritual truth which contradicts his iconoclastic postmodernist openly declared affiliation. In Libra and JFK, Truth or Dare, I argue that since almost no researcher wastes time, resources, and efforts to look for great truth, what he or she is left with is the challenge to interrogate an almost inscrutable topic, that is to dare to have opinions on, and not only vague, fruitless, self-erasing ideas about the uselessness of such an enterprise. At the end of my analysis, I tend to believe that it is still worth daring to search for the truth in the case of the Kennedy assassination, but that it is equally important to define your methods and tools and to take full responsibility for your stand. At the end of the day, it is truth or dare, not truth and dare. And if you decide to play a game, you have to play by some rules. The common denominator of Libra and JFK is that they discuss the Kennedy assassination in conspiracy theory terms. No matter the nature of the account, factual or fictional, the scale, the participants, and the motive of the plot each of them imagines, a narrative pattern they are based on echoes a largely shared belief that took shape immediately after the president was declared dead. In what follows, I will try to offer an overview of the controversies Libra and JFK gave rise to and to analyze their causes. In the case of Libra, the little fictional argument engendered a morally and a theoretically oriented debate. One critic, Timothy Parrish, argues that, quote, in the fictional world of Libra, John DeLillo, not Lee Harvey Oswald, or the conspiracy theorist, is the author of November 22nd, 1963, and its subsequent narrative possibilities, unquote. This statement is rather superfluous to those who have no difficulty discriminating between a factual and fictional account. Surprisingly enough, there still are such people among well-read readers. The inability or unwillingness to accept the aforementioned difference underlies George F. Will's Shall We Look at the Mind of an Assassin review of Libra, published in Washington Post on September 22, 1988. George Will characterized John DeLillo's Libra as, quote, an act of literary vandalism and bad citizenship, an exercise in blaming America for Oswald's act of derangement, valuable only as a reminder of the toll that ideological violence takes on literary talent, unquote. Will accuses DeLillo of inconsistency because, on the one hand, he stated in the final author's note that he had not tried to provide factual answers, and on the other hand, in an interview, claimed to have developed, quote, the most obvious theory that does justice to historical likelihood, unquote. One does not need a second reading to conclude that the two statements buttress and not at all subvert each other. Will misread the phrase historical likelihood because he focused on the word historical, whereas DeLillo's argument centers on the concept of likelihood, the understanding of which is the key to the whole debate. The as-if logic of fiction is the issue at stake, and George Will failed to read Libra for what it is, a novel. Will's critique takes a moralizing turn when he argues that novelists drawing on historical events should be true to life. They should be, quote, constrained by concern to truthfulness, by respect for the record and the judicious weighing of probabilities, unquote. And when self-censorship does not work, George Will feels that it is his duty to warn the reading public against the harm of books like Libra might do. Based on character's definition of history as, quote, the sum total of what they are not telling us, unquote, Will comes to DeLillo among the paranoiacs and conspiracy addicts. But again, he fails to realize that this is a conviction of a character, that is a paper being, living in an imaginary universe, and that a character's thoughts and feelings should not be attributed to the author. A one-to-one character-author correspondence is counterproductive, first of all, because an author cannot be identified with each and every character, and second, because an author is ontologically superior to the figments of his or her own imagination. Will goes on to say that DeLillo, as the representative of the American left, saw the Kennedy assassination as, quote, a turning point in consciousness for Americans, and the event event that fueled American skepticism about historical objectivity, unquote. The president was killed, said the truth. The president is dead, long live the president. Oswald was killed, justice was done. Oswald is dead, long live America. The Warren Commission report came out, and questioning an officially established truth is an unpatriotic act. This, in short, is George Will's argument. His major criticism is that DeLillo pictured America as a sick society that breeds extremism and conspiracies, and Oswald as a national god, a product of the culture. It is true that DeLillo placed Oswald within a social and political context which could not be but America in the late 50s and early 60s, but he did not portray Oswald as a national god. That is too far-fetched. Will goes as far as to suggest that DeLillo's definition of a writer as, quote, the person who stands outside society, independent of affiliation, the man or woman who automatically takes a stand against his or her government, unquote, almost associates the writer with an assassin. A parenthetical note, quote, Henry James, Jane Austen, George Eliot, and others were hardly outsiders, unquote, comes down to saying either you are with us or you are out of the canon. It is Will's belief that DeLillo's political affiliations make him, quote, a good writer and a bad influence, unquote. If there's an ideal reader for the Warren Commission report, then that is Don DeLillo, because he actually read the 26-volume report before he set to write what he calls a work of imagination. Someone who has done so much research work as DeLillo has done must have his own opinion about the Kennedy assassination, although Libra makes no claim of historical objectivity. Without denying the importance of history as a discipline or the validity of historical writing, DeLillo's endeavor proves that novelists do have a say, not only in universal matters of the heart, but also in historical matters. Asked what fiction offers to people that history denies them, DeLillo answered that, quote, fiction rescues history from its confusion, providing the balance and rhythm we don't experience in our everyday lives, in our real lives, finding rhythms and symmetries that we simply don't encounter elsewhere, unquote. Apart from this conflict, Libra became an object of dispute between literary critics, who consider it to be another example of postmodernist fiction, more precisely of what Linda Hutchins termed historiographic metafiction, and those who argue in favor of it being a modernist novel. As the very name points out, historiographic metafiction displays a hybrid nature due to its double orientation. It represents the meeting point of two opposite notions, art for life's sake and art for art's sake. On the one hand, it is concerned with history and with the way in which the past has come down to us, and on the other hand, it feeds on itself due to its metafictional bias. Linda Hutchins argues that such a narrative reconsiders the relationship between historiography and fiction and concludes that they do not stand apart due to the former's claim to objectivity and the latter's tendency to depart from and distort reality. On the contrary, historiography and fiction come together on account of their being mere discourses and as such prone to subjectivity. The theoretical background historiographic metafiction is steeped in is the process of relativization whose prominent champion is David White. Drawing on White's argument that historical writing is no different from fiction because both the historian and the novelist are inescapably ideologically biased and use the same means of implotment and argumentation, radical postmodernist theories overemphasize the role of the imagination in relation to historiography. White claims that since history uses the same narrative strategies that fiction relies on, no historical event can be inherently tragic, comic, romantic, or ironic, to use Northrop Frye's terminology. It is presented as such according to the point of view and the narrative pattern that historians choose before they